All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the 2024 Cavendish Town Informational Meeting to order. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Ripley, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Some basic reminders about tonight. I'd like to remind everybody here that we're here tonight in the Civil Assembly to act as a community in the tradition that is older than the state itself. We meet to come together to discuss issues facing our community. As we deliberate, we need to advocate for our positions, but not at the expense of our neighbors. Please don't make accusations or refer to somebody in a negative way. Let us remember that there's an immense gap between us, or there's an immense gap between saying I am right and I believe I am right. Let us remember that our neighbors with whom we disagree with are good people who just think differently than we do. Let us remember in the end, caring for each other is far greater importance than any differences we may have. As your moderator, I'm here to help you accomplish the business that you intend to do. I'm here to facilitate your discussion. When we get to the part where you get to speak, please speak to me after you've been recognized. You'll need to come up to the microphones to talk, so you'll be either talking to a member of the board or myself. All articles will be voted on by Australian ballot. I will read them, ask if there's any discussion or questions. Remember, we can't make any motions, amendments, or take any action until they're voted on tomorrow. So when I ask if there's anybody who wants to speak, just start forming a line, just start walking up to the microphones, and make sure to remember to face forward and talk into the microphone when you're asking your question. Whoever has the best ability to answer that question, whether it's me or one of the board members, will do so. If you have a question for another person, please ask it through me. So if somebody says something in the audience you didn't understand or you want some clarification or something, please ask them to clarify, but ask through me. If you have spoken already, I may not call on you again until all others have had their say. If you're going to refer to something in the town report, please tell us what page it's on so everybody can see what it is you're talking about. Need to remind everybody that only registered voters here in the town of Cavendish can speak here tonight. If you're somebody who's not registered, please respect that you cannot take part in the discussion. Okay. We follow Robert's Rules of Order. There are several members of the group, not only out there but up here on the board, who have a lot of history and information that we may find pertinent. Robert Rules of Order state that no one person can speak more than twice on any issue. I would like to ask, unless there's any objections, to suspend that rule, which we can if there's no objections, as long as I've given everybody else a chance to speak. If they would like to speak for a third time or a fourth time, I would like to let them do that. Are there any objections to allowing that to happen? Okay, hearing no objections. There are people here who I just said can't speak because they're not registered voters who may have a question to ask or some pertinent information about whatever it is we're discussing. If they have something constructive to add to a conversation, I'd like to let them add it. Does any other object to allowing everybody to have their say if they would like to have their say? Does anybody object? And we will suspend that rule. Is there anybody here for the first time? Welcome. And as we've begun as a tradition for the last several years, I'd like to take a moment of silence for all the people that we've lost this year. Thank you. Before I start reading the warning and we having our discussions or people being able to ask questions, we have representatives here who represent us up in Montpelier. Both John Aronson and Allison Clarkson are here. I'd like to let them speak a little bit prior to us starting our formal meeting and giving you a chance to ask them any questions you have. Does anybody have any objections to that?
You want to give him a mic?
Alice and John, I don't care who goes first, whichever you would prefer.
It's the same.
You can actually.
It's one of these. Well, that,
And there's a microphone on the table if you want to stand with one.
Yeah, that one
So you can face
the
The
ground.
electorate.
It's on.
Thank you. My name is John Harrison. I live in Weathersfield, and I've had the pleasure of representing you folks. I'm in my second term, so I've been up in Montpelier for 3.5 years. It's been a transition this session from trying to figure out how to spend money that was coming in from the federal government to getting back to business as usual and making do with the amount of funds that are available without increasing taxes and fees. The ARPA money that flowed in by the literally millions and billions of dollars has to be either spent or encumbered by December of this year. That's the end of it. So I think you're finding that positions that have been created in the schools with what was called ESSER money is disappearing, and now it's falling onto the taxpayers. Anyway, it's a transition, and some of the members, I shouldn't say some of the members, it's a learning curve for some of us to take every bill, every piece of business that we do, and realize that there's money attached to it. Next week is the last week in the legislature that bills have to be presented on the floor. After that, it's a time called crossover. The Senate bills come over to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives bills go over to the Senate. No new bills will be considered after that time, with the exception of the big bills, the money bills, and the transportation bill and the bonding. I serve on the Institutions and Corrections Committee, so that's been the focus of my work this session. We've done significant work on bail reform. Probably not as big a problem in Cavendish in our immediate area, but retail theft has gotten to be a significant problem. The courts are trying to deal with a significant backlog. Our correctional facilities have over 35% of the people that are in the correctional facilities are called detainees. They haven't gone to court to be sentenced or found innocent, for that matter. So that's a real bottleneck, and it costs. They're taking up beds. Right now, we have 125 incarcerated individuals in Tallahatchie, Mississippi, which is a for-profit prison. And there's emphasis to try to get those people back into the state for various reasons. It doesn't really cost us more to send them down there, but nonetheless, they're away from their family, and I think we have a moral obligation to bring our citizens back into the state. We have 6 correctional facilities, and the newest one is actually Springfield, and that's over 12 years old now. And they're all getting into a state of needing further repair. It's incredibly expensive to build new prisons, and we're shying completely away from building any new facilities. Another, you've probably read in the papers about some issues with health care at the correctional facilities. Springfield was built with a larger clinic, and it's designed to house the population that tends to get older. So you're going to find people are going to be with long sentences or having problems there. The other thing is when people are in our correctional facilities, they don't tend to be in the best health to begin with. We have a moral obligation as citizens to take care of the detainees and convicted people as best we can, and I think we do a pretty good job. It's going over some numbers that I think Alice is going to elaborate a little bit on it, but Cavendish, it seems like a perpetual mud season, which followed significant flooding in July. The number that $3,233,000 is going to be flowing into Cavendish from FEMA, as well as the state is chipping in somewhere around $253,000 from what's called the Budget Adjustment Act. Last year we passed the budget, and then just last Friday we have a bill that's called the Budget Adjustment Act that fine-tunes the numbers that gets us to June 30th of this year. I think I'll turn it over to Alice Besson and let her take care of the other numbers.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all of you. I'm Allison Clarkson. I'm one of your 3 state senators, Dick McCormick and Becca White. Dick may show up tonight, but Becca's not able to. We represent 25 towns, and I think this is such a rich opportunity to really go and hear what each of our towns, or as many of our towns as we can get to. It's a real rich opportunity to check in and listen to the municipal discussion. So thank you for welcoming us tonight. We're actually your biggest partners. So the state and the municipalities work closely together, and I'm lucky enough to serve on Senate Government Operations, which is one of my 2 committees. I serve you as the Senate Majority Leader and as Vice Chair of Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and on GovOps. And in GovOps, we're having a very robust conversation at the moment about the open meeting law. And we've just passed out, and we'll be discussing municipal ethics once the House passes that bill to us. So we do lots of work with our towns. And anyway, I'll get to one of these things in a second. We went into this session thinking that flood recovery, mitigation, climate change, and housing were really going to be our top areas of focus, and indeed they are. But we quickly realized that we had an equally challenging perfect storm in our education funding system, in school funding and in school construction. A review committee and Agency of Education came back saying we had $6.3 billion in deferred maintenance and renovation needs around the state. It's just sort of gobsmacking. The key cost drivers you're well aware of for our school budgets this year: 16.4% healthcare cost increase for our teachers, the end of our one-time, John referred to it, our one-time federal COVID money, the ESSER money, critically important to getting us through some of the real challenges we face, but drying up, I'm gone. Overall inflation and debt service on some of the renovation projects and school construction around the state, because we all share in that, in the equity formula that we have. In addition, we found that we needed to fix an unintended consequence. We sadly have unintended consequences when we pass bills. In a policy change dated the 2022 Act 127, and it was an act which reweighted our students. Students are weighted for special needs, for various needs, and we reweighted giving more support for kids who are in poverty and kids with second language who are learning English as a second language. And there was a funding piece that really we had to fix, which we have done. But I would remind you that all of us are taxpayers. All the citizen legislature, all of us are taxpayers. We are feeling the same pain. There is no we, they here. It's all of us. And we are working very hard this year on measures to contain costs and to limit tax increases. But we're about to get the bill. So after town meeting and the approval of all the school budgets, the legislature gets the actual bill for education, which we don't have yet. And then we'll come to grips with the real numbers and the difficult task, which we all face at different points, of matching costs and revenues. But we're working on lots of different things at the same time. All the committees in the State House, come and see us. We're very open. We'd love to have you come up. But we're working on different aspects of flood recovery and future flood mitigation and climate change and climate resiliency. We're working hard on protecting our river corridors, restoring floodplains and the wetlands, reviewing the health of our dams. We have about 100 dams that are in terrible need, and some dams we'll be getting rid of. how government can better respond to disasters. We did pretty well. We get better and better after Irene. It's certainly much better after Irene, but there are lots of things we can continue to work on. And obviously continuing to move housing and development out of harm's way, which is one of the key things we need to work on. We're also working on addressing our housing crisis, continuing to reduce barriers to housing development in our downtown and village centers. We really want to build where it's appropriate, promoting housing density with zoning, permitting, and regulatory reforms. We're investing further in affordable and middle-income housing in all sorts of big ways. We're updating Act 250. Some of you may have been reading about this to help further clarify where to develop, where to protect, and how to make the entire process simpler and faster. So your town will be closely involved with your regional planning commissions to develop your own map and your own plan. And so it's really going to be a bottoms-up process and should be very good. We're working on continued firearm safety. We are sadly having to look at polling places and how to further protect our polling places in a very contentious election. And so open carry in our polling places is something we're having to address. And the building of ghost guns, which don't have serial numbers on them. We're updating our open meeting laws. After COVID, all those remote opportunities are disappearing in June, so we had to address our open meeting law, and we're trying to update that and encourage more access and more participation. Actually, we had great participation during COVID. I don't know about your town, but we certainly did. People felt it was much easier to engage in our select board meetings and trustee meetings. We're working on improving data privacy for adults and for kids. We've had huge mental health crisis with social media and our kids, and we're working to rein in that big time. And also we're continuing to support our public safety in all sorts of ways. So many issues are being addressed in the State House, everything from telehealth to transportation to fish and wildlife, and your citizen legislature is working hard on all these issues. And with federal money drying up, as John referred to, it's going to be a very tight money year, which is challenging because we need more money for flood recovery. We face the perennial challenge of how to pay for all the good things Vermonters need and want. And our hearts are big, but our pocketbooks aren't quite as expansive. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you. I treasure this opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to serve you in Montpelier. And thank you very much. And good luck in this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, John. All right, so the warning reads, town meeting warning for Monday, March 4th of 2024 at 7:00 p.m. And it reads, the legal voters of the town of Cavendish in the county of Windsor are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Cavendish Town Elementary School or via Zoom on Monday, March 4th at 7:00 p.m. and at the Proctorsville Fire Station or Fire Department at 10 o'clock in the forenoon on Tuesday, the 5th day of March, to transact the following business. On Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, by Australian ballot, with the polls opening at 10 a.m. and closing at 7 p.m., Article Number 1, to elect the town officers for the ensuing year by Australian ballot. There's a sample ballot, I think, on page 71 of the book in the back. Does anyone have any questions or discussion about the ballot or the people running for office? There's a lot of them without names. Does anybody want to volunteer for any particular post or office? Martha, you're raising your hand? All right, seeing no questions for Article Number 1, let's go to Article Number 2. Let me take a deep breath. To see if the town will vote to collect all taxes on real and personal property for which it has a statutory taxing authority in installments. Taxes collected by the town are to be paid to the treasurer on August 15th, November 15th, February 15th, and May 15th with an interest of 1% per month added to any tax principal balances due and not paid by the quarterly due date. The final due date for all tax principal balances is the 15th day of June, after which they shall become delinquent and subject to an 8% penalty in addition to the interest. If a payment due date falls upon a day in which the treasurer's office is officially closed, payments then due will be accepted without penalty or interest added if they're received by 4:30 p.m. the next business day. Amounts allocated to the current year taxes under the state of Vermont's Homestead Property Tax Income Sensitivity Program shall be applied to the taxpayer's property tax installments pro rata, with total adjustments divided equally between all 4 quarterly installments, in accordance with 32 VSA 666A F1, again by Australian ballot. Any questions, comments, or concerns about our collection of taxes? Not the collection, but the amount, I guess. Seeing none. Article number 3. Will the voters adopt the fiscal year 2024-2025 town budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen in the amount of $2,456,889.39? Again, by Australian ballot. Does anybody have any questions about the budget or comments? Please come up to the microphone. Please state your name and again, remember to face forward while you're talking so the microphone picks it up.
Yes.
They are on.
I hope you can hear me through my mask,
Step forward just a little bit more.
okay?
Wait a sec. Try again.
Hello? All right.
Who did the sound test?
You're on.
Hello? There we go. Okay, thank you. I'm here to talk about our ambulance service and the $78,000 that we have budgeted to spend on that, which at this point, I assume and I believe is going to the town of Ludlow to have their ambulance service. And I just want to tell you a little story, if I may, about a personal experience where I was in need of ambulance and the Ludlow ambulance refused to take me to Mount Scottney and insisted that they could only take me to Springfield Hospital. Okay. So I started doing a little research about why this was so, and found out, and speaking to John here tonight, found out that this is not an uncommon thing throughout the state. And I've talked to the select board, and I've talked to the ambulance service, and I've talked to the people at Springfield Hospital, and have not gotten any greater satisfaction. There are a lot of people in the community whose doctors have rights at Mount Scottney, all of whose records are at Mount Scottney, and who are taken to Springfield Hospital in spite of their need to go to Mount Scottney. And I'm looking perhaps to do something to have some kind of a special committee formed, or a group of citizens who would be willing to work on this and explore a little further why we couldn't have a little bit more of a choice about where we go to for our emergency services. As I said to the select board when I met with them, I, for one, do not want to go to Springfield Hospital. And in talking to other people in the community who've come up to me after the article was in the paper, a number of people agreed with me that it might be closer, but it's not the most appropriate way to go. So I'm asking if anyone is interested in working with me on this to get in touch, leave their names at the town office, or if you know where I am, get in touch with me, and maybe we can put together a little study group, or get involved with our legislators and see what we can do to be a little more proactive about coming to some kind of a better system for those of us who are getting old and who probably at some time soon will need to have an ambulance come and take us away. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Does anybody else have any comments or questions about the budget?
Hi, my name's Ann Cooper. I appreciate the opportunity to get more information tonight. I have a question on page 23. We have extra resurfacing money this year, and I wondered how many miles that might cover.
Is it on? Can you get okay.
It's there.
It kind of depends on the road, because each road is a little bit different on whether or not needs to be torn all the way down and completely rebuilt, or if you can just put the wear surface back on top. But some of our roads are in pretty rough shape, and that extra money could do about a third to a half of a mile of road. It's not a lot of road to be done with that amount of money. Paving's very expensive.
That's generous.
So you expect there to be more the next year as well? This is, I mean, it's not going to get better as we go
This
forward.
is kind of, this was our intention is to get started in getting some paving on the ground, and then adjust kind of accordingly. I've talked to a few pavers before and engineers, and to go status quo, we kind of need to be in the $250,000 to $300,000 range to continue and to try to get back to having all the roads paved. But yeah, it's going to be a long road to get all of them done.
I realize that the state is responsible for the highways, and this is only the paved back roads. So you're saying that it's less than a half mile of coverage?
I would say it's less than a half a mile. It depends on the width of the road, which of course makes more pavement. It depends on if the contractor has to tear it all down and rebuild the base. A lot of times if you put pavement over the top of a base that's no good, that pavement doesn't last very long and you're repaving.
Thank you for letting me comment on this, because I think there are some people that think that there's more money there than there really is.
It gets us started, but and we should see a difference with this money, but it'll take a while to get the whole town. It'll take quite a while.
Thank you.
Please, sir.
I'm going to follow up on that some more. It's the same thing with gravel. I mean, we have it looks like a fairly limited budget there, and we have some roads that are in pretty rough shape. Do you have any idea approximately how far you think this $40,000 worth of gravel is going to go?
I believe we're more than 40 in this. It's 78,500 for gravel this year, which is a lot more gravel than we've had in the past. We actually have our own gravel to be crushed, which is about $7.50 a yard. And that number there for this year's budget represents crushing 10,000 yards of gravel. So we should have quite a bit of gravel on hand. And again, that is to build up our existing roads and kind of, instead of being reactive, a little more proactive with the back roads and the dirt roads. Some of them need to be built up, and of course, mud season, we need some as well.
Yeah, but so that 40,000, does that include the trucking to place this? And is this something we're going to do with our own guys, or are you looking for outside help to get this done?
No, that 78,000, I think is what it was this year, is 78.5. That is for us to use and for us to put on the roads, not for contractors.
Okay, so do you think with the crew we have, you're gonna be able to get this work done?
I believe that they work pretty hard. I think they're going to be, it's going to be a tough challenge. I know last year we didn't get a lot to it for obvious reasons. But I think they can put that amount of gravel out and build up the roads.
Okay.
I know it's asking a lot for them, and I think they're up for the task. And I've talked to the road foreman quite a bit, and he's kind of excited to have the gravel and be able to build up the roads as well.
They do a good job, but it is a limited crew and doesn't take too much of a speed bump. And we're going to be in this same situation again next year, only further behind the 8 ball. So if we start to slip, what is our backup plan?
If we start to slip, I mean, I guess I really haven't thought about that. I mean, right now we got the materials. We're hoping to have the materials through this budget. I don't believe we're going to use all 10,000 yards. We need to have some on hand for mud season because, that's our whole budget. We're going to crush it all at once, but that is going to be for the whole year's worth of gravel. So we'll save some. So whether we put out 6 or 7,000 yards onto the roads, we will be fully staffed. We'll have 3 people hauling to the grader. So we can haul a lot of material, but I agree with you. It's a big task.
Yeah. Well, and the state of the roads the way they are now, you've got a lot of work in front of you just to try to get them back to, a reasonable condition before you can even start to spread the gravel. So just want to be sure we're headed in a good direction.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we got a lot of work, and hopefully we can all hope that the mud season is almost over instead of just beginning like usual, and we can get out there and really start working at it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martha Mott. And on the subject of roads, as you know, Rick, I live off of 20 Mile Stream Road. We moved there 24 years ago. It was a beautiful paved road. We live off on the dirt road. It hasn't been touched since, and it's really difficult to drive that road and around the curve and up the corner and around the potholes. You mentioned that we're going to do some paving, but you didn't mention a timeline. Do you have any idea of when these paved roads will be redone? That's one question. The other question is, we have a sap truck. I love sugaring, but it's doing a real bad number on our dirt roads to get to our house. Like, I can't even get my minivan through there almost tonight. So those 2 questions, 20 Mile Stream paving and the back roads, especially during mud season with the big ruts.
Now, as far as 20 Mile Stream, I'm not sure exactly which roads that we're going to get to. But when I say when we're going to pave a road, we're not going to touch only one road. I don't see that happening. I see, whether or not we can make something work on that stretch of 20 Mile Stream to get it until it's able to be completely paved, then you can use money there as well. It's not complete tear down a road and that's all we're going to do and kind of go away from the holes we have everywhere in town in the paving. As far as the sap truck, the roads are not posted, but even if the roads were posted, sap collection is considered agriculture, and they don't. They're not required to go by the posting of the road, so they would be on that road no matter what. But again, hopefully the roads dry out a little bit real soon, and we can make a big difference in a short amount of time as soon as they dry out. That's your question.
George?
I would just add that in the past, we've waited till the state has allocated. Every so many years, we get a big chunk for roads. And we've sort of gone between Tarbell Hill and 20 Mile Stream. We just did Tarbell Hill. So I would expect the 20 Mile Stream would be next, but it might be a couple years.
Yeah, well, that's the smaller amounts.
Any other questions or concerns about the budget? Okay, moving on. Article number 4. Shall the voters of the town of Cavendish authorize cannabis retailers to operate in the town pursuant to 7 VSA paragraph 863, again by Australian ballot? Please, just start coming up to the microphones and everybody can take their turn.
Hi, my name is Sandra Russo. First, I'm not questioning the use of marijuana, so I'm not going down there. Just the request to vote on Article 4 really prior to any open town discussion on the pros and cons of having a retailer in Cavendish. Is this loud enough? Okay. I'm sorry? Okay. So I have some questions. According to the select board minutes, Dan Singleton is requesting approval for a dispensary. Is there a difference between a dispensary and a retailer? Because our article says retailers plus. Okay. I'll do the second part to that and then you can answer. If the town vote is yes, does that mean approval for the possibility of multiple retailers? Because that's what's in the article. Hello.
I can answer that. I believe when Dan came to the select board, he asked for this to be put on the ballot. He didn't really ask for a license because the town does not give out the licenses. The licenses are done through the state. The Liquor and Cannabis Control Board, they issue the licenses. So that being to your second question, we don't have control if there's a second one either, if there was one or two. This article here, when Dan came forward, we figured we'd put it to the voters on whether they would like it or not, because Vermont is an opt-in state for retail. It is law that they allow retail, but the town must opt in for the retail, not opt out.
Right. But I don't think he could get a license from the state unless the town opts in. Is that true?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
So I guess my question is, I know when Ludlow went through this, and I know it was a while ago, but they had meetings and people would come and talk about the pros and cons. I went to that meeting, although it didn't affect me. And it was very, very interesting. So I'm just kind of wondering why we're putting this on the ballot to get maybe a yes or no vote without discussions so that people could be a little more informed about when they're making that vote. I don't know if things have changed from back then. The other part is that we're a no-zone town. So let's say if we opt in for it, and Dan is nothing against the Singletons at all, and Dan gets a license, do we have any control over where the building is? We have a school here, where the building is, what it looks like, what the signage is going to be, how it's going to integrate into our town.
The way the law is written is we cannot make any ordinances or any rules to govern just cannabis retailers. They would just follow the same ordinances or zoning in some towns of every business. You can't make special ordinances just for cannabis retailers.
But since we are, maybe, I don't know if that pertains to a zone town, but since we have no zoning, we still have no say in what goes on?
There can be a local control board,
Right.
but they're kind of limited in their ability to be able to do much. Most of the licensing in the stuff you're referring to it comes from the state licensing.
And also, is the town, if it's a yes vote and he gets his license, a lot of the municipalities develop a cannabis control commission. Totally, I don't know totally what they do, but that's something that maybe the town would have to look at. But I still think, with everything that you just said, I still think a meeting or some meetings should have happened before this vote came on and people voted on it so that they could be informed about, or what what have other, I know Chester has one. What are the pros and cons they felt, just to inform people a little more before they vote on this.
I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I know it kind of took me by surprise. It was not something we planned on putting on the article, but when they came with the request, it was decided to leave it up to the voters on whether we'd opt in or not. But it was not a planned one going
Right,
forward.
I understand that, but I'm sure Ludlow must have had that also, where someone requested to put the article up. I'm assuming, and yet Ludlow felt it was necessary to run some meetings, and they were very active meetings. So I just felt that maybe Cavendish should have done the same thing. But I appreciate your responses. Thank you.
The dispensary. You wanted to know about the dispensary. The difference between a dispensary and a retailer? Yeah. Thanks. The difference between a dispensary and a retail is the dispensary is medical marijuana, which we've had for many, many years, a very successful program here in the state. So that's what a dispensary is. And actually, they're quite challenged right now, and we're working on how to, what their future is going to be, because retail has sort of eclipsed and undersells them. It's a challenge. So it's actually one of the issues we're working on in the state.
I do have another question. So when this article says that there are retailers plural, are we really saying it's okay if we have multiple retailers in Cavendish? If the vote is yes. I'm looking at you, I'm sorry, Mike. Whoever.
If the vote is yes, then it would be up to the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board. If they deemed two licenses.
Do they tend to allow a small town like Cavendish to have more than one retailer?
I would not think so, and I've read a lot on this. I know they say the local commission doesn't have that much say, but I'm sure they would have some say in something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments about Article number 4? Hearing none, I'll move on. Article number 5. Shall the town adopt all future budgets by Australian ballot? Again, by Australian ballot. So this is where we would decide that we're going to continue to do things the way we've done it for the last 3 years. This will be the 4th year we've done this. Usually, town meeting is a little bit more active because we're changing things. We're amending things, we're adopting things, we're taking things out of the budget or adding things into the budget and voting it here on the floor. That's the way we used to do things pre-COVID. Since COVID, because not everybody could come to the meeting or we'd have it only on Zoom, we switched to Australian ballot. So tomorrow we'll decide whether we continue to do this, where we just have an informational meeting and then vote the next day, or go back to the way we used to do it, where you would be making the decision tonight about budget. What else would we pass? Most of the other articles, but not Article number 1. Article number 1 would be voting. So all the voting for people would be done tomorrow, but almost everything else would have been done here tonight. So that's what you'll be voting on tomorrow. Do you want to go back to the way we used to do it, where we vote here off the floor with the people that are in the room making the decision? Or do we continue the way we've been going?
Could I hear some pros and cons to each one? I mean, I've been coming to town meeting for many, many years, and I used to see this place filled up, and we would have a lively discussion. And I understand that things change too. Only the ones that were here made the decisions. So I see some of those pros and cons, but I'd love to hear from other people what they see the pros and cons are before I make that vote tomorrow.
Stu?
Years ago, I graduated
Just
from Linden
for the
State.
record, say your name.
My name is Stu Lindberg. I'm from Cavendish here. I've been here my whole life. I went to this little elementary school. I've come to many, many town meetings. And I have been taught my entire life the importance of town meeting and doing things from the floor. It is an ancient tradition dating back to the Greeks. It's a foundation of our constitutional republic. It should be flowing in everybody's veins here. It's something you don't ever want to give up. I mean, we hear it all the time on the television, democracy, democracy, democracy. Well, the best democracy is a local democracy, and that's the one that's right here. And well, I encourage people to do not ever give it up. Go back to the floor votes and, you know, talk to your friends and neighbors and bring your kids to this meeting, because once it goes away, it's awful hard to get it back. Thank you.
Wendy, please.
As many of you know, Stuart Lindbergh and I rarely see eye to eye, but in this case, I think he's right on. Surprise. And I agree. I mean, it has to do with we don't get together as a community except for disasters, and we do that really well. But the joy of getting together and coming out of the woodwork on the first week in March and seeing our neighbors and seeing that they've survived the winter and having conversations and voting on the budget, so if we want to turn down a part of it, we don't have to turn down the whole part of it, I think is a really, really important part of our democracy and of our community. And I really strongly urge people to vote this down.
Thank you, Wendy.
All right, Peter LaBelle. I would like to pick up on a little something that Stuart just said. And once you give it up, it's hard to get it back. I know we did this going to Australian ballot because of COVID. So, you know, valid reason for doing it. Why do we keep doing it? Is it only because more people can vote? Well, more people should come to town meeting and have the dialogue and hear what goes on. I think making everything by Australian ballot is the death knell for town meeting. And if everything is done by the vote on the next day, why have a town meeting? And eventually it's going to go away. And I would hate to see that happen.
Diane?
I would love to keep town meeting, but I have seen in the last 21 years the numbers go down. Tonight we have 38 people in this room. The numbers for people voting by Australian ballot for the last number of years has been about 200 to 300 people. If we're going to keep town meeting, we need to do something to make it more accessible and to bring people here. The other thing I want to remind people of is there's no early voting, there's no absentee voting on the town budget. If you're not going to be here for town meeting, you don't get to vote. If you're away, if you're sick, if you're home with small children and your husband works at night and you can't make it, which I think is the case for quite a few school-age parents, people who have school-age children. So those are just things to consider. If we're going to keep town meeting, somebody, and I don't want to be in charge of it, needs to figure out how to get more people here. Change the day, have it be a Saturday, I don't know. But as I said, I've watched it. Last year we had 60, the year before we had 84, and so far we have less than 40 people here tonight. Just because somebody is not here does not mean they're not informed when they come to vote by Australian ballot. There's definitely a larger turnout for Australian ballot voting, and that's just the numbers.
And for those who have never been here or, you know, are old like myself and forget, we'd have ladies or the students here serving food and coffee, and they might be selling raffle tickets for something, and it would be a longer night for all of us, and I'd be scribbling furiously and changing things and amending things and trying to keep track of all of it. But we do make decisions here then, and we know what we're talking about because we're all following along together. And we can change things.
Hi, Tim Calabrese. If we do vote during a town meeting, how does Zoom impact that? Are people allowed to vote via Zoom?
No, they wouldn't, and that's unfortunate.
Okay.
So they could follow along, they could type in and ask questions, and we'd interrupt and let somebody ask their questions or whatever, so they could still have input, but they wouldn't be able to vote.
Thank you.
I don't know what you people are talking about. I'm deaf on a stone boat. These things scare the hell out of me. What I would like to ask of you, if I could, and by the way, my name's Ed May. I'm a habitual troublemaker at these meetings. I always get myself in trouble. What I'd like to ask of you, if you're discussing something in the town report, can you please send up a flag with a page number, write me a letter, send it to me so I know where I am?
Yes, sir.
I would appreciate it very much. I don't know whether I just caught hell for coming to the meeting or what. I don't think I did. But
No. Thank you, Ed.
Okay. Thank you.
May I speak to the issue?
Please, John.
Your town clerk spoke appropriately. If you vote to go to Australia to defeat the articles and go to an open meeting again, believe it or not, I agree with Stu Lindbergh. Don't fall off your seat, please, Stu. That it is by far the most pure form of democracy. Switch to a Saturday, switch to daytime. There's a lot of gray hair here, including my own. A lot of people don't like to drive at night. Generally speaking, people have Saturday off, and generally speaking, you can see a lot better.
And for those of you who agree, I'm envious. Mine just falls out, so I don't have the choice. Please come up. You can form a line. It's okay.
Betty McEnany. I have a question about your attendance at Australian ballot voting versus here. Back when we did vote things here, but we still went to the ballot box to vote for candidates.
Yep.
What were the
Speak up
comparisons
just a
there?
little bit closer.
The comparison between the in-person attendance and then the next day when you voted for your candidates. Okay.
But anecdotally, do we have more people that came to vote than attended town meeting? So when we used to do town meeting back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we'd have 150 people here, 200 people here, whatever. But we'd have more than 200 people vote.
Well, it depends on the election.
Right.
Whether it's
So-
just local elections or whether there's a presidential primary or whether it's.
So it involves whether it's state, local, or presidential too.
I want to go on record too as saying we need to keep the in-person. We need to be able to amend a budget or add something. So I'm definitely stay in that ballpark.
Thank you.
Anna Shapiro. I'm not really allowed to talk. I just wonder when it changed. I remember going to town meeting. It was an all-day thing, daytime. I guess everyone got the day off because the meetings were huge.
Well, since I moved here in '98, they've always been at night, and sometimes they'd last till 11 and 12 o'clock at night when I get home, and my wife would be like, "Where have you been all this time?" I swear to God, I've been at the town meeting, hon, and I go to sleep and have to wake up and go to work, and yeah. So maybe moving to a Saturday would be beneficial, especially if we could do it late morning. And
Did it used to be a state holiday? Because it was a weekday.
that was before my time. George?
I just wanted to say that since the school went to an Australian ballot, that dropped the number of town meeting quite a bit because, and that's when we used to have refreshments and stuff because there was a break between. And
We used to do both the school budget and the town budget from the floor. So we'd have back-to-back meetings.
Right.
Jen Leake, I think the most important thing in a democracy is having a voice. And how you have that voice is less important than having the voice. It's been a long time since my kids were little, but I remember on a school night, you can't hire a babysitter and have them out until 11 or 12 at night. And you can't bring your 4 and 5-year-olds to town meeting for that long. And so it divided your family and it split your vote in half to not have both of your parents there to vote on the school or the town budget. And I think that the last time that we had in-person meeting, we had twice as many people come the next day. And it's been that way for a long time. And having a voice, you can come to budget meetings anytime you want. And you can put your input into how that budget is put together. And there are many ways to have a voice, and having an Australian ballot, if it gives twice as many people a vote, that's a huge thing. And I think that is something very important to consider. Holding on to a town meeting just because you've always done it that way is not democracy, in my opinion.
And just to be clear, tomorrow we're only talking about the town meeting. The school budget will be by Australian ballot. We can't change that. At least not here. Not us.
Hi, back again. I'm torn between this two, like Martha was saying. I remember those old town meetings when, you were up till 11 o'clock and you ate all those wonderful cookies and everything. But to Diane's point of view and to Jen's point of view, we have Zoom and those people can't vote. And a lot of people get used to Zoom and less people are coming out. I don't think it's that they don't care, but, well, I guess they know because they could vote tomorrow. But it's hard the older you get, like driving at night or family issues. And I think if it's on Australian ballot voting, more people get to vote. And I think it's important, rather than just have 50 people vote. But I understand what Stu is saying, but maybe things have just changed. Those town meetings were wonderful, but I think things have changed.
Any other questions or comments?
Mike?
Dave?
I would just like to second what Jen said to the audience here, that if you have twice the turnout by Australian ballot, I think it's the only way to go. I mean, just having the meeting, because it's what we've always done, that doesn't make it right. If you're getting twice as much turnout for voters, that's the only way to go.
Okay. Wendy?
I wasn't going to say anything again, but I have a big mouth, so. It's a question of community. If we can't celebrate together in one way, such as coming together here, we should make an effort to celebrate the positive things about our community in another way. Listening to our legislators talk about all of the problems that we have in the state, and listening to talk about all the problems we have here in town. But there are a lot of joyous things to celebrate too. Each of our neighbors, I mean, the way that we interact with each other on a regular basis is something to celebrate. And we don't have that time to do it. We don't have the ladies and the kids having the food anymore. We don't have sitting around talking to each other in the interim between the town meeting and the school meeting. This is past, perhaps, but there should be a way of being able to gather together and celebrate the positive things about why we are a community together.
Thank you, Wendy. Tim?
I don't see why we couldn't maybe combine the two, still have the Australian ballot, but maybe have town meeting on a Saturday. And we could have it here. There's a school, there could be daycare, there could be food. That way it's a combination of both, and we still get the voter turnout.
I like the idea of exploring, maybe moving it to another day, especially if it's a weekend, and that may help get people to come out. Well, we'll make a decision tomorrow. Okay, seeing nobody else, let's move on to Article number 6. Shall the town vote on all future public questions by Australian ballot? By Australian ballot tomorrow. And I'm assuming these are questions like Article 7, 8, 9, and 10. So when you look at Article 7, 8, 9, and 10, Article 6 is asking, would we vote them off the floor like we used to, or do we continue doing them in the voting booth like we have been the last 3 or 4 years? So it's basically the same question.
And Mike?
George?
I guess some of the question is exactly how informed people are. And when you have an article that you've just seen for the first time, like Sandra mentioned about the retail cannabis, there's no opportunity to have discussion or debate. And so I think to just say because more people vote that that's more democratic isn't really getting to the point of democracy, which is having people involved and discussing what's going on and different articles and the pros and cons, and then reaching a conclusion. And personally speaking, I'd rather have 38 people who have a better understanding and are more educated about an issue voting than to have hundreds of people who just don't really have a sense and are going to check one or the other. So that's my position. Thank you.
Mr. McNamara?
Yeah, Mike McNamara, and I would love to remember the old town meetings, but I always worked at night. And I don't think that's a correct representation of saying that people aren't informed because they're not here. That you just said. I don't agree with that. I was always well informed. I was never able to attend meetings for almost 20 years. And I think having it on another day or having it on the ballot, but to say that you got 38 informed people and a couple of hundred who vote who aren't informed, I don't think that's correct. I don't buy that.
I mean, right, some people are. I'm just saying you can't have dialogue. You can't have something that comes up from somebody that makes you think and say, oh, okay, that's a different side. And that you just won't have.
And I agree with Mike. There's a lot of ways to be informed other than being at town meeting, which being at town meeting, I've been here most of my life. There are a lot of other ways. We have all our meetings recorded by Okemo Valley TV. All our notes are Cavendish Connects. You can read them at any point. You can certainly email any of us if you have a question. So I don't think that it's necessarily not being in the room doesn't mean you're not informed.
You all good?
I just wanted to point out that Rick and Jen and I, and now Gladys, would tell you that we have people who call all the time before town meeting to discuss what's in this town report and what does this mean? What does that mean, vote all future questions by Australian ballot? We explain things for, from the budget meetings on. People call all the time to ask these questions, and we spend a lot of time on the phone explaining the ballot questions in the articles. So people do inform themselves, and they inform themselves by having conversations with each other as well. So I agree that doesn't mean, if you're not here, it doesn't mean you're not informed. People do ask questions.
Stu?
Can I speak from right here? I can speak loudly. I would just make a suggestion that the select board at the next meeting takes up the issue of moving it to a Saturday. And maybe somebody makes a motion and there's some discussion about it. And maybe for next year we can get the meeting moved to a Saturday.
I think. Yeah.
Right. It has to be a, if it gets voted tomorrow to go by Australian ballot, then to change back to going to a town meeting will have to be done by Australian ballot the following year.
Or a special meeting.
Or a special meeting. Correct.
Yeah.
So somebody would have to get the signatures up and
Yeah.
get a special meeting, okay? Thank you.
Tim?
If you kept it Australian ballot, could the select board vote to move the date of the town meeting?
I'm not sure.
I guess I'm not 100% sure on that.
But something we could find out.
Yeah, we can find out, but I would guess that's voted. That would have to be the voters as well. I don't
No.
know the select board to make that decision for everybody.
But if we can find out and then bring it up at a board meeting at some point and then get it out to everybody, and maybe if everybody wants, we have a special meeting. Martha?
I think the voters voting tomorrow by Australia ballot won't know that this is an option, what we brought up.
Unless they're watching
Unless
tonight
They're all
or,
watching tonight. And I love Tim's idea perhaps of doing both with a town meeting on Saturday, but then somebody's got to arrange it, to Diane's point, right? Who's going to arrange the childcare? Right, Tim's going to arrange it for us. But so how do we get that word out that, okay, maybe you don't want, maybe there's this other third option that we don't have on the ballot. They just have Australian ballot or town meeting. I don't know how you do that.
any other discussion? All right, then let's move on to Article number 7. Article number 7. See if the voters of the town of Cavendish will authorize the selectmen to exempt the Black River Health Center, which is a 501c nonprofit corporation, from all taxes on real and personal property for the next 5 years on its building and lot in the Cavendish Village. This is by request and by Australian ballot tomorrow. Any questions? Comments? Mr. LaBelle.
I'm wondering whether the town treasurer or the town manager could enlighten us as to the economic effect of exempting this property from taxation. How does that affect the rest of us taxpayers?
I can answer that. If you look on page 25 at the very end of the budget, what it costs the taxpayers in assessed value, in taxes, is $16,061. That's what we pay as a result of exempting the Black River Health Center and Fletcher Farm. So we add that to the amount that needs to be raised by taxes.
Yep, just come on up and form a line so we all know that you want to say something.
So my question is, if that's the cost of it, what is the benefit to us for having to pay more out of our own pockets? What benefit is it to the residents of Cavendish to pay more for somebody else to not pay? Any answer?
If Fletcher Farm or someone from Black River Health Center was here, that they could answer that. I'm not really sure. George is involved in Black River Health Center, so he could perhaps answer that.
Yes, the Black River Health Center has been going since the 50s, and there used to be a doctor there, and that's when this started. And since then, it has had a number of different functions. There was a clinic there. There was the oil school had it for a few years, and right now there's a number of practitioners and therapists that serve the community. They basically have offices there. It's like a professional building, but we try to keep the costs as low as we can for the benefit of those being served, the community members, so that it ends up serving not only this community, it is available to people outside of the community too. But it's been something that has helped the community in a number of ways by having people who are in the healthcare business be able to have a place that local people can come to either get therapy or treatments or different aspects. So
you're saying we should pay more because doctors, nurses, therapists, people that already make enough don't have to pay?
Well, it's right now, originally that was the fact, because the doctor lived in town and he practiced out of that building. And that was something the community said, well, if it's serving the people of the community, then, it was voted to be tax exempt. And it has been since, I think, the mid-50s. There are, other things that have requested this, like there's the Fletcher Farms has had is this on? Yeah. Sorry, not holding it. There are other places like Fletcher Farm that had a ballpark that was used by people in the community, and so in the past that has been voted also to be tax exempt. And of course there are other buildings in town that don't pay taxes because they benefit the community, but some of those don't require to come before the town every 5 years to have that renewed.
Okay.
So there's a $16,000 shortfall. How much of that pertains to the health center? Number one.
I think the health center is maybe $4,800. I don't.
About $4,800. Okay.
About 48, and the balance is Fletcher.
All right. So $4,800 is roughly 0.003% of the budget, less than that. It's negligible. Spread that out over all the taxpayers in town. How much does it affect me, and how much does it affect the other people in the building on our taxes? Are we paying $10 a piece more each quarter, or is it like $2.50? And is that worth arguing over?
Yeah, I think it's about 0.0054 per $100,000 of valuation is what you're going to get. That's the amount of money that we have for taxes.
Hi, my name is Margot Caulfield, and I'm speaking with my Historical Society hat on. This is the history of the Black River Health Center building. In 1957, the town was in desperate need of a doctor, and they were told if you build a clinic, you'll get a doctor, which is exactly what they did. The people at the time at Kenwood Mills actually had money taken out of their salary. They worked on weekends, and they built a beautiful clinic. They attracted Dr. Bont and another physician. In time, they formed what is called a Rural Health Initiative in the 70s when that became possible. They had doctors, they had a whole fleet of primary care medicine. When Dr. Bont left for Albany Medical Center in 1988, and his wife, Phyllis Bont, who was a nurse practitioner, they tried many different things to keep the Black River Health Center going. They tried clinics, they tried this and that, and it didn't. Today, there is no MDs there, there are no nurses there. It is primarily mental health, which that's great, but it's not primary care. Our federally qualified health center building is the Ludlow Health Center. Now, I'm not going to debate the tax issue because the bigger issue was at set time that this was not a true health center. And a health center would be doctors and nurses, your labs, your x-rays, and all of what that was built for. It was to revert to the town. And my piece is that this really needs to go back to the town because we need housing desperately. That would be a great place for a public housing project. Not necessarily public housing, but affordable. We need to be really thinking of how we deal with housing. It is a huge issue for our town. But I think it's really important to know that our health center is really the Ludlow Health Center. It's not Black River Health Center because I don't consider complementary and alternative therapies are terrific and wonderful, but it's not your COVID vaccine. It's not your flu vaccine. It's not things, doing polarity is fine if that's what you want. Iridology, I question, but whatever. You have to really think about this. I am in support of public health. I am also a big supporter of mental health. If the whole building was doing mental health, that would be one thing. They would be a satellite of Ludlow Health Center, which has to offer mental health anyway. But that's not what's happening. And we need to be honest, how can this building best serve our town?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deb Harrison, and I am a clinical social worker that rents a space. This is weird.
Good, speak into the microphone. You got to talk to the board anyways.
All right. So I am a clinical social worker that rents space down at the Black River Health Center. And I'm here to ask folks to vote yes to continue our tax exempt status. I think to consider not having a health center in our community with everything that's going on right now feels really short-sighted. The Black River Health Center, as Marco shared, has been part of our community since the 1800s in various ways, shapes, and forms. Dr. Bont came in and opened it as the health center, and I think to be able to continue to practice out of there, I think, again, with everything that's going on, I think would be really short-sighted. Currently, there's 4 providers there. There's 3 of us that live here in Cavendish and Parkersville. 1 lives in Ludlow. We are providing services to hundreds of folks since the last time I stood before you. We've provided healthcare services in different ways to to largely local people. Most of our clients are from our towns, from Cavendish and Proctorsville. The rest are from Ludlow, Springfield, Chester. So, which also brings more people into our towns, into our businesses. So that's bringing folks into town, which I think is a benefit. We would love to we have more space. We would love to have more people in there and to make it back, try to bring it back to the vibrant place that it once was. I think we are available. I think we don't have the wait lists that Ludlow, right now Ludlow doesn't have mental health providers, but we are more available. We are more accessible to folks who don't drive, who don't have a license. We have plenty of people that walk to our center. So I think even getting to Ludlow for some families, for some folks, especially some elders, that is not an easy solution. That's a barrier to them getting care. So I think we're available, we're accessible. I think, again, we've been able to have a more timely response and focused response to the health of our community around the time of the flooding, with the pandemic. Like, we were here to take care of our neighbors. And so I just think that, again, we talked about the mental health crisis, we've talked about the opiate crisis, we've talked about healthcare crisis, to consider potentially closing this down, to me, just it's not how we take care of our community and our neighbors. So please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. George?
Is this on? Yeah. I just might mention that we are a 501c1, right, corporation. And COVID hit us hard because we used to have like more people there, and the visiting nurses were there who we donate a lot of money to in our appropriations. But because of COVID, a lot of people just couldn't make it for a while when you couldn't see anybody. So now that's starting to come back, but it does serve the community. Thank you.
Yes, Mike McNamara. Is there a financial statement people could look at from the health center?
Yeah, I don't have one here, but
Where would that be?
We have them at the meetings. We have quarterly meetings, and they're open to public, and we always have financial reports presented at every.
Wouldn't you think it'd be pretty important to have one here, though? When you're asking voters to.
We've done this since, I've done this a number of times, and we never have before, so it wasn't like, I thought of that.
And
But
all the providers there, they do charge. This isn't a free service, correct?
right, but there is a sliding scale, quite a sliding scale,
Okay, thank you.
because we offer it at a very reasonable rate, so that they don't have an overhead that's high. They can afford
I
to.
think in the future, though, asking for tax exempt status, you should have the facts and figures in front of the voters before they make that determination.
Anybody else? Okay. Then we will move on to Article number 8. That's okay with everybody? Shall the voters of the town of Cavendish exempt the lands and improvements of the Fletcher Farm Foundation from real estate taxes for the period of 5 years commencing with the 2024-2025 tax year? This is by petition and will be done by Australian ballot. Tim?
Hello again. My name's Tim Calabrese, and I'm a trustee at the Fletcher Farm Foundation. And I'd just like to speak tonight about what the foundation does and the benefits that it gives the communities. The foundation was established in 1933 by the daughters of Governor Allen Fletcher and his wife. It was established then as a tax-exempt organization. So that's been 91 years that we've been serving the community by offering land and buildings for various community groups, donations to local groups. The exemption, which has been historically granted, will continue to allow the foundation to serve the town now and into the future. And I'll just go over a list of what the foundation does. They make a yearly donation to the Cavendish Fletcher Community Library in the amount of $10,000, provide buildings and grounds for the Fletcher Farms School for the Arts and Crafts, also scholarships for Cavendish and Ludlow residents to take art classes at the Fletcher Farm School. That's $6,500. They're below market rents for the Two Rivers Supervisory Union, Stepping Stones Preschool, healthcare and rehab services, and also below market rents to the Society of Vermont Artisans and Craftsmen. The dining hall is available for community groups. They provide land for the community garden, provides land for the Ludlow Community Dog Park, provides land for the playing fields, and also land for the vast snowmobile. And in the future, we're working on building mountain bike and hiking trails on the property. There'll be close to 5 miles of trails, and we hope to start building those this summer. Also, too, we made a donation to the Flood Relief Fund for the Black River Good Neighbors and the Cavendish Community Fund. So I'm asking the town tonight to consider voting in favor of this article. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments?
As to the Fletcher Farm, right there, that answers the questions of what value does it bring to this community? Clearly stated to us the values they bring to the community for what they're asking. So I personally am in favor of that because, to put eloquently, what they do for our community and to allow them to keep doing for our community.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please.
Tim did a great job on the list. One thing that he didn't cover was the fact that twice a year, the Black River Good Neighbors holds their yard sale. I bet every one of us has stopped there at one point or another, but that's a huge event for Black River Good Neighbors.
Yep. Any other questions or comments?
I'm Linda Parker. I don't really want to comment on that. I just want to comment on how this meeting is and just listening to the opinions of people and the comments that people make is really important, and it does definitely affect how I feel about voting, listening to what other people say, and just calling and asking questions of what does this mean is not the same as listening to other people's opinions and how they feel about it. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, then let's move on to Article 9. We're entering the home stretch here. Shall the voters of the town of Cavendish authorize the selectmen to exempt the Cavendish Volunteer Fire Department from all taxes on real and personal property for the next 5 years, again by Australian ballot? This one's a little easier to see. Stu?
Clarification on that. The Cavendish Fire Department, and I'll speak for them because I don't know the governance of the Proctorsville and what they own or anything, but the Cavendish Fire Department doesn't own really much of any property. It belongs to the Cavendish Fire District 2 along with all the apparatus.
Right.
So I didn't I'm not asking for an exemption. I didn't petition for one, and I'm on the fire district. I just thought I'd make that clarification that I'm not sure exactly what the town would exempt the fire department from, because they really own, just one apparatus, which is a UTV, which is a 2011 and
Well-
long depreciated. But so I just thought I'd throw that out there as a clarification.
Dave?
I would just like to say that both fire departments provide a very valuable service. Both fire departments provide a very valuable service to the residents of Proctorsville and Cavendish, and I don't think by any means they should have to pay taxes on their property.
Anything else? Then we will move on to Article 10. Article 10, shall the voters of the town of Cavendish authorize the selectmen to exempt the Proctorsville Volunteer Fire Department from all taxes on real or personal property for the next 5 years? And this will be voted on tomorrow by Australian ballot. Bob?
This article was put on 10 years ago when Richard Speck was here. Both fire districts, fire departments had never paid taxes. We were exempt. But some legal matter came up 10 years ago and Richard had it put on. And it was supposed to have been voted on again a few years ago, a couple of years ago, and we forgot about voting on it. So that's why it's on now. And it's put on for every 5 years, so we don't go. And that's 10 or 12 years before it's brought up again.
Any other input about the fire department? Wendy? You made it just in time.
We're not voting on anything tonight, but could we have a non-binding show of hands about how many people would be interested in having town meeting in person on a Saturday, just to get a sense of where people stand?
Sure. Who would like to see it done on a Saturday? Say mid-afternoon, late morning, mid-afternoon?
Why not?
Excellent. So, it's something the select board will probably need to look into. Okay. Having nothing else, I will call the meeting to an end. Thank you all. Oh,
Don't you have?
And before you leave, if you are interested, there's COVID tests in that box over there. If you want to grab a couple, take them home. And while you're voting, too.